ASYNC opened the human mind. The theory says ASYNC never discovered another dimension, they just accidentally mapped human consciousness. The first clue is the company's own history. Before the Low-Proximity Magnetic Distortion System, ASYNC manufactured MRI technology designed to map the inside of the human body. Then they built a machine capable of opening impossible spaces. Inside the backrooms, familiar places start appearing: childhood bedrooms, old furniture, hallways that feel remembered instead of constructed. The layout keeps changing, but it keeps pulling pieces from human memory. Then there are the entities. Supporters argue they don't behave like creatures invading the maze. They appear after people arrive, grow more intelligent over time, and often reflect fear, guilt, or panic. Almost like the Backrooms is processing a human mind and leaving physical residue behind. Suddenly, ASYNC's cover-ups start making more sense. People didn't come back with monsters, they came back knowing the human mind wasn't trapped inside the brain anymore. Mary's mother knew about the Backrooms. One of the weirdest rabbit holes in the movie barely happens inside the Backrooms at all. It starts inside Mary's childhood home. The windows are covered with newspapers, furniture blocks the doors. Her mother keeps warning her not to look outside because something is out there. Then years later, Clark starts describing the Backrooms. Mary doesn't react like she's hearing a crazy story for the first time. She freezes, like she's heard it before. That sends people back to the flashbacks. Nora spent years sealing the house, refused to let Mary outside, and eventually ended up institutionalized. Supporters think she wasn't hiding from the outside world. She was hiding from whatever she brought back with her. Then the Backroom starts recreating Mary's childhood, almost room for room. The clutter, the layout, spaces nobody else should know. Maybe Mary didn't discover the Backrooms because of Clark. Maybe the Backrooms already knew exactly where to find her family. ASYNC used people as test subjects. The weird part is that ASYNC barely acts like a company trying to rescue anyone. They're watching, recording, waiting. Throughout the movie, cameras keep following people through the complex while scientists sit safely behind monitors like they're observing a lab experiment instead of a rescue mission. Then there are the decoys, cardboard cutouts, voices playing through intercoms, fake people placed in empty hallways just to lure the still lifes into view. That's a very specific setup if you're only trying to understand the dimension. Also, Mary isn't treated like someone who survived. Phil casually says, "Her fate isn't up to me," and that's it. Supporters think people like Clark and Mary were never accidents. They were data. Every panic attack, every hallway, every encounter gave ASYNC another piece of the puzzle while the complex kept responding in real time. Then remember what happens to anyone who gets out. They're dismissed, institutionalized, diagnosed. Almost like the biggest threat wasn't the Backrooms itself, it was somebody coming back and describing what ASYNC was actually doing in there. The Backrooms creates broken copies. The Backrooms never builds anything quite right. Rooms look familiar until they don't. A living room has the right couch but the wrong walls. An office feels recognizable, yet every hallway seems one turn away from where it should be. Like somebody rebuilt the world from memory after getting about half of it wrong. The same thing happens with people. The still lifes have faces, clothes, habits. Some even repeat simple actions over and over. Then, you get close enough to notice the twisted anatomy, the blank foam-like insides, the details that don't belong. It's almost like the Backroom scanned a person while they were moving and just guessed the rest. Supporters compare it to a corrupted MRI image. The dimension keeps copying reality, but every copy loses a little more information than the last. A hallway becomes a maze, a memory becomes a monster. Which makes one detail especially uncomfortable. If the Backrooms can build a broken copy of a room, why couldn't it build a broken copy of the person who walked into it? The Backrooms is a trauma prison. The Backrooms almost never throws random horrors at its victims. It throws their horrors back at them. Clark finds Pirate Clark. Mary keeps getting pulled toward pieces of her childhood. The windows keep appearing. The same memories, the same fears, the same places they keep trying to avoid. Mary's mother covered every window in the house. Mary can't stop looking through them. Pirate Clark doesn't just resemble Clark, he acts like another version of him, forcing Clark to confront something he'd rather leave behind. None of these encounters feel random. They all pull the characters back towards something personal. Supporters think that's the pattern. Every hallway leads back to an unresolved memory. Every familiar room becomes another confrontation. Every window becomes another chance to face whatever's waiting on the other side. The Backrooms doesn't simply trap people inside endless corridors. It keeps steering them toward the things they've spent years avoiding. That's what makes the place so unsettling. Escaping isn't about finding the right hallway. It's about running out of places to hide from yourself. Which raises a pretty uncomfortable question. How many people in the Backrooms are actually lost? And how many are just refusing to leave? Mary never escaped. The ending looks simple until you start paying attention to where Mary actually ends up. ASYNC pulls her out. She wakes up in a clean interrogation room. Problem solved, right? Then little things stop lining up. Phil barely reacts to what she's been through. The room feels strangely empty. The lighting has the same artificial calm the Backrooms loves using. And while Mary's being questioned, the movie quietly cuts back to another version of her sitting alone inside the yellow rooms. Supporters think that's the real ending. The Backrooms has already shown it can recreate places, people, and even entire environments. So why would it suddenly stop at the exit door? Some viewers argue the interrogation itself could be one last construction, built to convince Mary she made it back. Or maybe ASYNC really did recover someone, just not the original. The scariest part is that nobody around her would know the difference. The copy has the memories, the voice, the face, and if that's true, who exactly walked out of the complex? The Backroom stores repressed memories. The Backrooms has an oddly specific taste in architecture. Old office spaces, empty furniture stores, faded yellow wallpaper, waiting rooms, worn carpets, places people barely remember until they're suddenly standing inside them again. Clark keeps running into pieces of his old furniture store, the same displays, the same aisles, the same layout, except the doors lead somewhere else. Walls appear where openings should be. Entire sections end without explanation. The environments never stay complete. One room blends into another. An office becomes part warehouse. A showroom turns into a childhood hallway. Familiar places break apart and reconnect like scattered pieces of the same memory. Supporters think that's exactly what's happening. The Backrooms isn't inventing these locations, it's rebuilding fragments people have forgotten, stitching together places the way memory actually stores them, incomplete, distorted, and mixed together. The stranger the architecture becomes, the less it feels like construction, it feels like recollection, which makes you wonder how many rooms inside the Backrooms once existed only in somebody's head. The Backrooms is a living organism. What if every hallway is part of the same body? Passages seal themselves. New ones open without warning. Entire sections rearrange after people move through them. Safe routes suddenly vanish. Dead ends become new corridors. Radios stop working. Signals disappear. The complex keeps reacting instead of simply existing. Then there are the creatures. The bacteria appears wherever people don't belong. The still lifes look like unfinished attempts to recreate human beings. Neither behaves like ordinary monsters. Both appear as the complex responds to whatever enters it. Supporters think that's the real rabbit hole. The Backrooms isn't just a place filled with creatures. The place itself is alive. The bacteria behaves like an immune system identifying something that doesn't belong. The still lifes are failed attempts to understand foreign life. Every hallway, every wall, and every shifting passage is part of the same organism trying to figure out what entered its system, which makes every expedition feel a little different. Maybe ASYNC wasn't exploring the Backrooms. Maybe the Backrooms was dissecting ASYNC.